everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So, 2002 saw the release of About a Boy, and the critics just stampede over each other to become the first one to tell you that this was one of the best movies of the year. This was a movie everybody should see. They were gushing over Nicholas Hoult as, Marcus, but they were gushing even more over Hugh Grant as Will, because this was a movie that, presented to the world that Hugh Grant was not a one-trick pony. He was a guy who could put up some serious acting bits if the role so required it. And this is the thing that I think happens to a lot of guys who, were just typecast as, being first lover or, being these, charming dickheads or stuff like that. When they hit 40, for some reason, they go from being quite insufferable to becoming, whoa, these guys are pretty excellent actors, for instance. Best example of this is probably Matthew McConaughey, who I couldn't stand until around 2013. Then I realized, Jesus Christ, he's so fucking good. Then he just, put out banger after banger after banger after banger, and now he is one of my favorite actors ever. And the same thing can be said for Hugh Grant. The last few years he has done a couple of fantastic roles, especially when he's working with Guy Ritchie, who seems to bring out the best in him. Gentleman, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Rusty Gare. He's so charming and he's so fun in those movies, and he seems to enjoy himself so much that when About a Boy came out, I really hated Hugh Grant, and I found him to be insufferable. So when I saw this movie originally, I didn't like this at all. But in the interest of fairness, I did rewatch the movie so that I could, refresh my opinion about it. And I think that this movie is better than I remembered it to be. It's still not a movie I would, recommend or anything. It isn't bad. It is just, a part of this avalanche of British films that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s, like Brassed Off or, Billy Elliot, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. All of those movies, had this, British charm to it that I never really fell for. It's not a bad movie that we're gonna take a look at today. It is just a movie I thinks that it is a little bit smarter, a little bit more charming, and a little bit cleverer than it actually is. But let's find out what this movie is about. This is About a Boy. Worked a day in his life. You see, his dad wrote this very popular Christmas song, and the royalties from it has made him economically independent. So he just, goes around and do whatever he wants to, mostly sitting home watching game shows, playing his guitar a little bit, walks around, drives around in his sports cars, eats at fancy restaurants and stuff like that, and has, a good sense for fashion and what is cool and music and stuff like that. And also he has a habit of going out with attractive women that he then dumps a few weeks later because he sort of gets bored with them. He's basically, a teenager or a kid in a grown man's body. And then we have a Marcus, played by a debuting Nicholas Hoult, 13 years old by the way, who is the exact opposite of what Hugh Grant is. He is a kid. He's very serious, he's socially awkward, and he doesn't have any friends, and he is a bit of a loner, and he has to take care of his suicidal and depressed semi-hippie mom, played by Toni Collette, whose job in this movie is actually ugly cry every about 15 minutes. That is basically the entire thing she does. She's depressed, ugly cries, and complains and stuff. Not a very fun role to play, but she did it very well. So how do these two people actually meet? Well, Will has cooked up a little bit of a new scheme for himself, because he has discovered that dating single moms is a great idea, because you can then dump them and, explain away that, you're dumping them because you're not a good role model, and you don't have to have the, bad conscience, and you're being seen more of a hero and stuff like that. So he, joins single parents, support groups and stuff like that. And then he sort of runs into Marcus and tries to help him when his mother is trying to off herself. This is the bit with the disgusting bread and the dead duck, essentially. And after that has happened, Marcus starts to hang out with Will, whether Will likes it or not, because he needs a sort of a friend who can explain this to him and, you know, teach him how to be cool and stuff like that. And he sort of reluctantly takes him under his wings and, you know, tries to, you know, essentially make him a little bit less awkward, because Marcus isn't exactly the most popular guy in school, dressing funny and sings, you know, whenever he feels like it. And Marcus singing is one of the worst things you've ever heard. I think I'd rather listen to A Jingle with Julian 100 times rather than hear Marcus sing one single note. It sounds like somebody fighting in my ears whenever I hear him sing, and I will never ever able to hear the song Killing Me Softly again, sung by any artist after this. Jesus Christ. So what's going to happen with these two characters? Are one of them going to be able to, you know, grow up and become a responsible adult? And will one of them be able to, you know, actually being a kid and, you know, enjoy the kid stuff? We shall see. Now, the title of this movie is of course a very, very clever thing, because about the boy. Who is the boy? Is it the 13-year-old who acts like an adult, or is it the adult who acts like a 13-year-old? That is of course very clever, and one of the things that this movie thinks is more clever than it actually is. But the question is this a good movie? I will say yes, and I will also say no. It is marinated in this very, very charming Nick Hornby English thing that, you know, was very popular at the time. It has a very nice cinematography. I really like the voiceover things that both Marcus and Will provides us with. And everybody's doing a pretty good job, but it isn't quite as heartfelt as they think it is. It isn't quite as charming or as clever or as funny as the movie thinks it is, or that, you know, most people thinks it is. But I'm happy to be wrong if I'm wrong. I didn't care that much what's going to happen to either Marcus nor Will. I was actually a bit confused over one thing concerning Will. Will is supposed to be, you know, economically independent. He can essentially do whatever he wants to. Why is he hanging out in his apartment watching game shows? He can bang bitches in Brazil. He can shoot kangaroos in Australia. He can go on wine tours in Tuscany. He can sail the lakes of Titicaca. He can hang out in St. Kitts and Nevis. Why is he stuck in fucking London? I don't understand that. Maybe they could have explained that somehow. That was just one thing with, why isn't he doing anything like that? Why is he just, you know, walking around shooting snooker and, you know, buying CDs and stuff like that? His life seems uninteresting somehow. But I guess that aspect of the movie is meant for us to, you know, want him to become a more mature, more responsible person or something like that. Everybody's doing, as I said, a very good job, and very late in the movie comes the very talented, enormously charming and very, very elegant Rachel Weisz, who sort of comes in and maybe becomes the catalyst that, you know, will make him more susceptible to, you know, become an adult, and, you know, maybe she's the one, maybe she is the one he should go for and stuff like that. We shall see what happens. There are aspects of this movie that I really, really like, but there is also a little bit too much drama in this comedy, and sometimes they just go a little bit overboard with Hugh Grant and his, you know, charming shtick, and the movie is a little bit too long for its own good. But I really like the ending of this movie. I had forgotten actually how incredibly great the ending was. It was a great closure for the characters. Even though it was a little bit predictable, it was very charming and made me actually forget a lot of my, you know, previous criticism of this movie, because I have always been a huge sucker for movies that has good endings and good closures for the character. That is so important that I can overlook a lot of stupid things and lame things that would, you know, happen before. As I said, Nicholas Hoult makes his film debut in this movie, and he would go on to have a pretty damn good career, actually, making a couple of really great movies, playing a bunch of really good roles. And I wouldn't say that he's one of my favorite actors or anything like that, but whenever I see his name appear in the cast, I know that we are in safe hands, because he's very, very reliable. If you've never seen About a Boy, it's not a movie I necessarily recommend. There are a lot of better, you know, charming dramedies from the UK that came out, you know, from this point in time. But it's a pretty charming, well-written and well-acted movie, but there's really nothing here that really grabs me. There's nothing here that makes me go, I want to see what happened to these characters. And there are no really, you know, funny jokes or great character arcs that really make me go, oh, I have been, you know, experienced something here. It is just a movie that has some charm to it, some heart to it, and has some pretty good actors to it. It's not bad, but it is not the masterpiece that, you know, people were talking about 21 years ago, and I didn't see it then, and I see it even less now, despite the fact that I actually think that the movie was better this time than when I see it the last time. But that is more due to the fact that I have, you know, realized that Hugh Grant is a lot of a better actor than you know, I saw at the time, because I can see, you know, the brilliance lurking under the surface, waiting for him to, you know, hit his absolute peak, which he did in, you know, the mid to late 2010s. But here he's pretty damn good, and the movie is decent enough. If you like these charming British comedies with a lot of heart, I think you will like this movie a lot more than I did. I give About a Boy 42 points. I haven't read the book, so I cannot say if this is a good adaptation or not. This movie sure as hell didn't make me curious about reading it, but Nick Hornby has a way of writing characters and a way of creating stories, which I think can be quite interesting, even though it is not that interesting in this movie. But as I said, the movie is quite okay. It has a couple of sequences that is really great, especially, you know, in the end and, you know, the last performance thing. I think that was quite fun, but there was just too much stuff here that I couldn't quite get into. So I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.